Good afternoon, everyone. Magistrate Spencer here. Let's start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we all are today. I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are with us today. I am very pleased to introduce today Makia Mayek, who is a Melbourne-based practicing lawyer and community advocate. To explore the issues that we have in our court, where we are seeing young African Australians overrepresented in our criminal justice system, and to really try to do a deeper dive, as we do in these Consider This series, into understanding what it's like to be born between two worlds and some of the issues that the community is dealing with. And it's wonderful to have Makia here because he's not just a lawyer. In true therapeutic justice tradition, Makia does other things in terms of advocacy. He's a board member of the Federation of Ethnic Communities Council and chair of its new and emerging communities committee, and he's held other positions with the Ethnic Communities Council as well, and has been a recipient of the Victorian Government's African Board and Governance Scholarship. So really, really wonderful, Makia, that you're giving up your precious time to be with us today so that we can broaden our understanding and better serve all the communities who use our courts. So over to you, Makia.
Thank you very, very much, Magistrate Spencer. I'll continue to call you on. I've had the privilege of appearing before you over some 2 years ago, and I acknowledge your commitment, and that was before Daniel Magistrate Court, and I acknowledge your commitment to therapeutic justice, your compassion, and the way you've dealt with the issues concerning our young people. So I do really acknowledge that. Just before I get into the topic, I'd like to join Magistrate Spencer in acknowledging the traditional orders of the land in which we're meeting, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. I'd like to firstly thank my friend Sarah Mara and Stranks for thinking of me in the light of appearing before some of the most preeminent judicial officers and legal practitioners in our jurisdiction, and others who are concerned about the welfare of our young members of our community. So thank you so much, Sarah and Anne. When I was asked to talk about the South Sudanese young people that are in contact or regularly get in contact with the criminal justice system, I asked myself, what exactly should I talk about? Because probably the judicial officers that I will be talking to know a lot about these young people. So I said, look, there's something that I think I bring to the table, and that is my understanding of the history, the migration history of the South Sudanese Australian community, the traditions they've come from, the resettlement process, and what that process has meant for them, because I'm one of them. I came here as a 17-year-old. I was 17 years old. I didn't have any parents. I faced probably as many challenges as these young people. But then how did I and others find ourselves in a position where we took the challenge of getting ourselves to learn the Australian way of doing things, so being able to take up education and better our lives. So I thought that's what I bring to the table in terms of the experiences that I went through as a young person, and my understanding of what these young people may be going through, and some of the overarching issues that we face as a community. So that's what I'll be talking about, and that's why we have the title there, "Live in the Gray Zone," because at some point I had lived in that gray zone because I didn't know whether there was this ambivalence about where I lived and who I was. Now, when we look at young people that have lived here in Australia since they were 2 years old, others were born here. How do they look at themselves? Where do they think they live? Where are they? Who are they? How do they identify themselves? To be able to answer that question, we need to go back and think about the South Sudanese Australians migration to Australia. Majority of people came to Australia between 2000 and 2008, the year 2008. I personally came with my auntie and my elder brother in 2004, and I said I was 17 years old. When we came, at the time, we were mainly Sudanese. We were not South Sudanese because South Sudan did not gain independence until 2011. So every Australian government records and even the statistical agencies such as the Australian Bureau of Statistics still do record some people as Sudanese because of that history. Now, it seems even when looking at some of the crime statistics do often refer and appear to use interchangeably the two identities, South Sudanese and Sudanese, and it's because of that history. Because by the time we came here, South Sudan became independent, and there seems to be a use of the two identities interchangeably. Now, a lot of people that came to Australia, that there was many of us at the time settled in metropolitan areas, Melbourne, Sydney, Newcastle, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Toowoomba, among other areas. But over the last at least five years or 7 years, there seems to be a large migration movement from other states to Victoria. Victoria these days has the largest South Sudanese population. I do not particularly know the particular reason for that, but it may have something to do with the cost of living. Not the cost of living these days, maybe as it was about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's probably relatively the same these days across many Australian states and territories. When we came, it was a difficult life for many of us, and I will speak about myself. As my family settled in Newcastle, I was lucky to have gone to school in a language where the language of instruction was English, and where the school that I went to, the teacher that I learned from was from here, was from Melbourne. Was a high school teacher teaching English in Bentley. She taught me English for about 7 years. So by the time I came to Australia, I was very lucky to have been able to communicate well. I had spent a few years not having gone to school because I could not afford the school fees at the time. So when I got here at the age of 17, I was at that age where I had not gone to school for about 3 years. But because of what I had, having learned English at the time, I was able to read, self-educate. So when I got here, I was old enough, and I said I wanted to go straight to year 12. somebody wanted me to go to a language school. I said, I think I know enough to go to year 12 because I want to have a high school certificate. So I was given an English language text. I'm so sorry, and was that from? Hopefully, that wasn't from my side. So I'll proceed with that. So that brief history of what when I came here, and reverberates across and with many South Sudanese, because one, there are two major migration routes for South Sudanese Australians. There's a large group of South Sudanese that came from the East African region. That includes myself. There's a reason why I'm mentioning that. English is the language of instruction in most East African regions. So when most of us that were in the refugee camps in Uganda or in Kenya came to Australia, we had a level of English language. Some were able to enroll in foundation courses. Others enrolled in higher education. Some of us that were young enough to go to high school went to high school. And that has a significant impact in terms of what happens as the resettlement processes come into force. Because one, there's an impact on and social integration. You are able to find friends like I did across many different groups. I had friends from all over the places. I was able to confidently play sport because I could communicate well with people. Not that I worked straight away because I was committed to school, but it does have an impact as well on employment, because if you speak well, if you can communicate with people, you are able to find employment. Now, there's this other group that came from the North African region, particularly in Egypt. This is so for those that were not so young, but this has an impact on the ones that grew up here as well, because majority of them did not speak English. If at all, it was really minimal levels of English, but majority did not. Over the years, that has had serious consequences, and I speak from my experiences as a member of the community and what I've observed over a period of time. It has had an impact in terms of education, being able to engage in education, being able to find employment, being able to connect with the wider Australian community. And we've seen that has filtered through young people as well, because it means if a household of 6 or 7 children, the father's not working, the mother's not working as well, everybody's depending on social security benefits. Young people want to play sport. They want to go to places, but their parents are not able to afford. That does have a contribution towards what young people can achieve. It also has an impact on education. I know, and I've seen young people that came to Australia when they were 2 years old, but at the age of 17 are not able to read properly. Why is that? My observation has been teachers can do as much as they can. The rest of the work is by the parents. But if your parents do not speak English, they are not able to follow up on your progress in school. And that has been quite a problem, and that has an impact on social integration. That has an impact on employment outcomes, and that has an impact on young people's understanding of what the society that we live in is all about. So the migration of the South Sudanese Australian community has had a significant impact in what we see today before and the young people contact with the criminal justice system. That is a very important factor for practicing lawyers to be able to understand when they represent their clients, because the magistrates and judges of the court are there to be informed, where lawyers are the ones with the responsibility to be able to take this information and present it before the court. And if the court is not adequately informed about these details, about the significance of the migration history and the impact of the resettlement, the person making the decision is not able to arrive at the right conclusion because they've not been adequately informed. So for practicing lawyers, it's very important to understand these migration histories, the migration history of the South Sudanese people, and how that has impacted on their clients' a transition into the members of our community. So as a practitioner, the first thing that I do, even as a knowledgeable member of this community that I come from, is inquire about the family history. Where did the family come from? Did the family come from the East African region? Did they come from the East African region? What was the starting point of their education? What happened if they're no longer in school? What exactly happened? At what point did they disconnect from school? And how were they before they disconnected from school? So I tend to inquire and look into these issues. And it's my view that legal practitioners that represent members of the South Sudanese community need to be able to understand their clients so that they can adequately inform our decision makers, the magistrates or the judges of the county court or the Supreme Court. So the other factors, the other issues that that are also relevant in understanding young people of the South Sudanese community are what the adult members of the community go through as well. How the migration and resettlement has impacted, has affected them. And this is basically to do the rigid cultural norms sometimes that we have. I know some of us may be aware of the different African groups. We come, when I say we, it's mainly the South Sudanese groups, mainly what they call the Nilotic groups. The Nilotic groups are the River Lake Nilots and the cattle keepers and pastoralists. We tend to have very rigid cultural norms. And that has had a significant impact on our adjustment to be able to balance between the Australian culture, let's put it broadly in those terms, and our culture as the Nilotic groups. This, from my personal observation, has led to family breakdowns. the ability to be able to balance between the two, the clash between the two cultures, has led to break down the family fabrics. The victims of, when the family breaks down, the victims are always the children, because either the father is not going to be involved or less involved with the children, or the mother is going to be less involved with the children. My observation has always been, when it comes to our community, has been the fathers being less involved with the children. And we live in large families, families of 6 to 7 children. When you are at six or seven or six children, mom is not working. Mom is not able to properly supervise the children's education or the children's social connections. What happens? Children tend to, and we are looking at really, really young people that are facing all sorts of pressures, just like all the young people across the society. And if you put all those factors together, we end up with the young people that are getting in contact with the criminal justice system. So migration has not just affected young people and the resettlement process, it has also affected us, the adults, because there has been a cultural clash that we've not been able to address. So the relevance for legal practitioners and our courts is that we need to be able to also inquire about when a young person appears before our courts, we need to be able to be informed about the family. What may have happened? How long ago was the father involved with these young people? Now, we've also I've deliberately skip not to talk about things like discrimination, racism, and all that, because I wanted to present mainly the problems, the social ecological problems from the South Sudanese perspective, what those problems are, and how we can inform our courts to be able to deal with these issues. Therapeutic justice, and I'm not going to be able to educate some of the most preeminent judicial officers on this. As I understand it, is participant focused. Its process impacts on the well-being of that participant. So if we're able to be able to be able to inform the court, I believe that practitioners should be able to understand the person that they represent, let me say in and out, because it's the only way that we are able to inform the judicial officers, our decision makers, about the personal problems affecting young people. So, in terms of the question that is being addressed today, how do these young people then find themselves in this gray zone? All these problems combine together to put young people that are neither South Sudanese, as talked about before, or fall within the category of what we call the mainstream Australians. because you are this young person that speaks English, does not speak Dinka, does not speak Nuer, eats burgers, does not eat South Sudanese food, does not have much understanding of South Sudan or the South Sudanese community, and not really in touch with the mainstream Australian community. So there's this bubble that these young people fall in, and they end up finding comfort in their peers or their friends who happen to be in the same bubble as them. When teenagers congregate in that bubble and they are facing similar problems, the results can be devastating. And in my view, this has been the biggest issue with the South Sudanese young people, South Sudanese Australian young people. Will today's presentation be enough to be able to inform our courts about these problems and how we should address them? No, we're not going to be able to. This is just a bird's eye view of what our young people are facing. What needs to be done is to look into these issues quite critically, to produce evidence-based information so that we can come up with the real solutions. I do see one of the people that are working around this, which is Santina Deng, who I can see is participating here through the recent government South Sudanese Australian Youth Justice Expert Group. That group is in touch with the community and should be in touch even more. Our courts should be in touch even more with the community, so that our courts are able to understand really well when a young person appears before a magistrate or in the county court or the Supreme Court. Then we know how to deal with that young person, and so that legal practitioners are able to adequately inform our courts about personal issues and personal background of these young people. I also believe that there are matters that just need to be dealt as they are. Of course, young people that are committing extremely serious crimes sometimes will just have to be dealt as they've committed those crimes, and we need to be able to look into the actual criminal history of that young person when they've had the support, to be able to, and they've engaged with the court process, and they are repeat offenders. It might have to be something that the court can just deal with. But in terms of the future and how we're going to deal with this issue, my conclusion on to this group is that there needs to be a way for us to bring in the community, the South Sudanese community members, the legal practitioners like myself and others that are trained in this system, that are officers of our courts, and that also have knowledge of the members of the community, so that we are able to assist other practitioners, so that we are able to assist our courts, and so that we can find solutions to the problems affecting our young people. And we're pressed with the time. As I said earlier, I'd like to leave 20 minutes to, if there are things that I've not touched on, then I'm able to answer some questions. So I will leave it there, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Makia. That it was a fascinating insight, and I was having messages sent to me from colleagues as you were talking, going, this is just amazing insight, and I think you've opened us to a new way of thinking. I love your analogy of the bubble. That makes a lot of sense to me, seeing that people caught between the two worlds and then finding that solace in the bubble of their friends and their peers. And I kind of understood how they might not be feeling connected to the Australian community, but I think understanding that they're not actually feeling connected to their own South Sudanese community and they're caught between, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that insight. I might just start off the questions then with if we are to pierce the bubble, in your experience in working in the courts and with clients in this who are stuck in the bubble, what sort of things have worked?
I will take an example, Magistrate Spencer. When I appeared before you 2 years ago, what I did was take a comprehensive information about the young person I was representing, so that I was able to adequately inform you, because the offenses that were committed at the time were very, very serious offenses. And for you, as compassionate and as sympathetic you are, you were also a judicial officer that needed to be informed that you have a young person that was ready to, that was engaging with our courts and wanted a chance. So what I did was take a comprehensive information about that young person, get into the family background, their education, and where it all stopped, and other things that he was doing as well. I was lucky as well at the time to be assisted by Selma, who I believe is very well known to you. So all that information combined, I believe, assisted you to be able to give that young person a chance.
Is out there, we need to be encouraging them to take a comprehensive history and understand those family dynamics and see where those disconnections are happening. And then you talked about Selba, who's from AfriAusCare, so that is a culturally appropriate support service in the community. So making those connections, maybe people who are listening from our KISS teams and magistrates who are working in different regions. One of the pieces of work we're doing, assisted by Sarah Ma at the Neighbourhood Justice Centre, is to map some of these services and connect with them better, so that you can make sure your clients are participants in our programs, or people coming before the court are linked with some of the culturally appropriate supports that are out there. That's a very useful suggestion.
We have a question in the chat from Sarah, actually. Any insights into what about the schools see young people, this is for shorthand, into how the schools, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, how the schools are seeing young people dropping out? Sarah, you might want to, if you need to rephrase that, please do.
No, that's fine. Just in terms of the clients you've had, Makia, are you getting that kind of insight? Why are they dropping out? What is it about schools that can't keep them there, or is there something systemic going on? What's happening?
It's a lot of things, Sarah. You're lucky as well that we're lucky that we've been. I've known you for a long time, Sarah, and the work that you've done in the community, especially with the education and all that. The problems affecting young people, especially in schools, are different, and some of these problems are some of the things that I discussed earlier. The socio-ecological problems, issues to do with the problems at home. Some of these parents not able to supervise the children adequately. The problems being children facing problems in schools as well. So it's not one thing. It's a raft of things coming from home, broken homes. Children, I know there is discrimination in schools, but it does not explain the whole picture. But it cannot just be the only issue. It's a whole raft of things that I can't just point a finger and say this is one problem. If we're going to keep young people in schools, we need to find comprehensive ways of dealing with this, and this has to involve everyone. That is, parents or their guardians, schools, and members of the community as well. And if there are people that assist or support young people in schools, so that they can find the right way to support those young people. So there's no one size fits all to what is happening in schools.
Thanks, Nikia.
Has anyone else got any questions? I might just ask you to unmute yourself and jump in.
Rachel Pounding has got one. Sorry, I just spoke over you. Oh,
thanks, Anne. Yeah, Ms. Spencer, just Makia, thanks so much for the presentation. I just wondered, you mentioned the role of the lawyers and the advocates. Has there been much work done with either VLA or community legal centres or even private law firms in relation to educating around the things that you've just talked to us about? Is there much going on there, or?
I've not been personally involved, but I've seen some work sporadically here and there on online. When even with my knowledge of the community, I tend to also research some things as well, so that I'm better informed. I've seen some of the work being done by the community legal centres and VLA. But I've not been personally involved, so I can't tell you to the extent of the work that has been done.
All right, there's a question here from Johnny King, who works out at the new Dandenong Children's Court, and is engaging with AfriAusCare to try to engage some of the young people and break them out of that offending bubble. And his question is, do you think the South Sudanese community response could include elders or something similar engaging in a culturally tailored court setting, a type of cultural sentencing conversation approach, and whether a young person could be engaged collectively in that sort of restorative sentencing? Would that have an impact?
Yes, absolutely. And I did mention this before, that for us to be able to deal with these issues, we need, all of us need to be on board on this. And that is the community, the parents. Sometimes what the response I've always had from the community is that lawyers use, young people use the client-lawyer privilege, which then means their parents are shielded away from information. I've had parents that come to me and say, I don't know what's happening with my son. I don't know where my son is. And I will give an example of a young lady who turned 18 in prison some couple of years ago. She was in prison for I think 8 months, and the parents didn't even know where she was until they came to me and I was able to, that young person was able to accept that I should represent them. I should represent her. So it was after 8 months when the parents found out where their daughter was. Now this is particularly worse with the young men. It's everyday problem here in this community that where young people completely shield away their parents from information. Parents that would be otherwise be in court to support the young people that are able to appear before you, Your Honor, and say this is, present and say what the problems, be able to assist the court. So it's very important for practitioners, perhaps at some point to act as advocates and say, if your parent wants to support you, this is what courts expect from parents. The courts expect parents to be there for their children. So I think it's very important for legal practitioners to be able to communicate or allow young people to advise young people to communicate with their parents and let them know the situation they're in. All of us need to be on board of these community members, and I said before as well, legal practitioners who are of South Sudanese background, who are trained in this jurisdiction and who also have a working knowledge of the community.
Excellent. Now, so I think that answers Justine's question about the role of family. So I might move on from that. Anne's asking, should we continue to call young South Sudanese people South Sudanese, or should we refer to them as Australians of South Sudanese heritage? Would that be clearer about their country of birth, which is often Australia, and change our understanding? So yeah, what's the right way to describe?
I think that's I've heard people of Greek heritage call themselves Greeks. I've heard Macedonians people of Macedonian heritage call themselves Macedonians. So I don't think in the overarching it becomes a real problem in terms of how we are trying to address the problems. I'm personally, I'm particularly proud of my heritage, and I'm happy to be called South Sudanese or South Sudanese Australian. Just over last weekend, the South Sudanese national basketball team was invited to play against Boomers. It was a moment of joy, of happiness for me, because there were young people that learned their craft and trade here in Australia, applying their trade for the South Sudanese national team, and we've got another young person doing wonderful things for Australia. So I had my scarf on, and I had my flag in the other hand. So one different flag and one scarf. But these are two important identities for me. You call me an Australian, I'm happy with it. Call me South Sudanese Australian, I'm happy with it. Call me South Sudanese, I'm happy with it. So I don't think it's a real problem.
Thank you. Now, I've got a question. If we're like a case manager in one of our court support programs, or we're a judicial officer, and we're talking to a person who's in that bubble, what sort of things might we say? What's some of the language we might use, or ways of talking about their situation that might resonate with them to maybe think differently about something or shift their understanding? What might work?
I think it's very important to emphasize on the role of if that young person is not being supported by family, is to be able to emphasize on the role of the family and where their parents, where his or her parents may be, why the parents are not there. Does he or she have a good relationship with the father or the mother? Is there anything that the court is able to do to be able to assist in getting the parent before the court, so that the parent is able to elaborate some things that the court may want to know from the parent, especially about the personal background of that young person. So the role of the family members here cannot be understated, as well as the role of the community members. If perhaps you ask, some young people do not really know about about the community leaders. So they may struggle to say who their community leaders are, but it's always very important to say, do you know whether there's a community leader that you know, that you trust, that you want to inform about what is happening with you? Is there a particular family member that you want us to hear from? So some of these things are quite intimate for these young people, and it may move them to involve their family members.
Thank you. Now, just mindful of time, and some people need to get back to court, but we do have some time for more questions if there are any.
Yeah, can I?
Yes, hello, Keith.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Really, really good.
Thank you.
My question is regarding the specialist courts, the therapeutic courts. We do have quite low numbers compared to the numbers of those who are in custody. What do you think the therapeutic courts can do to encourage probably the legal representative or the participants themselves to know about us and put in applications? Because these require the individuals to put in an application to say, I would like to try this. Who do come in, what can we do to make sure that they see their time through the therapeutic court? Because I think the benefits do outweigh being in custody.
I think it's really emphasized on the importance of what you do, and to really encourage them and their legal representatives for young people to be involved. At some point, if they don't want to, what can you do? But I think it's very important to really encourage the legal representatives to act as advocates for their young people as well, for their clients, so that they can encourage the clients to accept how the benefits of your program.
Thanks, Keith. Any other questions? All right. Well, you've given us much to think about, Makia, and really, I think a start of a conversation, one that we will continue with you and Dr. Deng and the community. As I said to our court support workers out there, we are doing a little bit of mapping of all the various organisations in the different communities that are doing great work, and we will have a document we can share soon that maps out all the services. And what I'd encourage you at a local level to do is to reach out to those organisations and start getting those referral pathways happening and strong. Particularly for Youth Justice do a lot of good work in this area for the 18 to 21s, but certainly for those who are coming closer to that end of the 21 period and turning 22 and but are still struggling into their 20s. So to have people involved in KISP and ARC and our drug courts to make those connections. So stay tuned. We'll circulate those connections very soon. And thank you, Makia, for giving your precious time. And we look forward to having further conversations with you. And once again, everyone, thanks for joining on your lunch hour. Good afternoon, everyone.